Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for our panelists for being here. For the next 15 minutes, we're going to be talking about sustainability on campus specifically, and also sustainability in the built environment. As you've heard across the day, sustainability can mean many things to many different people, but one of the emerging challenges is sustainability in our physical environment, how we build our buildings, how we operate them, the choices we make about our other kinds of infrastructure. And all 5 of the people I have with me here today are experts actively working on this problem in a real way, trying to make it real. So we have with us today Priscilla Chu, who's the principal of Purpose Building, Inc., Irena Creed, who's the vice principal of research and innovation at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, Bryan Duarte, who is the founder and CEO of Enliten, and Shatha Clavering, who's the director of strategic partnerships of the Climate Positive Institutional Strategic Initiative at the University of Toronto. It's a long, it has a good acronym, but it's a long name. And Saporta, who's the Chief Operating Officer of the University of Toronto. So I'm going to start by getting you all to tell us a little bit more about what you do in your day-to-day jobs and how you're working on this challenge of making a sustainable physical world. So Ron, I'm going to start with you. I know that a big part of your job is managing our physical campus. We have a lot of buildings. We take up a huge swath of downtown Toronto. So can you tell us more about how you're wrestling with this challenge of sustainability, and tell us, what is U of T doing? Where is our leadership, and what can we look forward to?
Thank you very much, of course. So I joined a couple of years back, and one of the first questions that I asked of the institution, of our campus is, what are our forward-looking plans? Where do we want to see ourselves going? And in fact, we started off thinking about what does net zero mean? And so we can contemplate a net zero building. We sort of wanted to expand that and ask ourselves, what does a net zero campus look like? What are the elements we need to include in that? And it was quite an interesting journey, because about halfway through that journey, we really challenged ourselves. And we said, if we can do net zero, why couldn't we go beyond net zero? And we started to think about things in a negative carbon type perspective. And so I'm an optimist and a positive person. So we took, instead of net negative type campus, we said, let's just call it climate positive. And we kind of made it up on the spot. There's probably lots of actual articles out there about what it means. But to us, it meant how we take our campus and we start to position it and think of it not so much as a carbon source, but can we flip that narrative and make it a carbon sink? And that's sort of the plan. It took us about 3 years to do that, to come up with a plan that we just recently published. And it's got 3 primary sort of drivers. The first of which is this idea that we need to be quite responsible in how we manage our growth, how we manage our campus. And that led us to things like doing carbon and energy budgets for all of our buildings, both the new and old. It challenged us on our existing infrastructure. So we're about to hit our 200th birthday as an institution. We've got Canada's oldest and largest district energy system underneath our campus. It's about 120 years old, and there's still sections and pipes that are 120 years old. So we need to renew it. And then the last part that was equally important to us was this concept of resiliency, and how we know with climate change will come a significant amount of adverse climate events. And we wanted to make sure that our campus is ready to meet those challenges, and we're ready to do that in a responsible way. So that's the overall climate positive campus sort of direction and thinking.
Great, thank you. Okay, talking about the campus as a whole, we're now going to move to Scarborough, and I have a question for Irena. So I understand that you run and work with the Earth Institute, which is a really excellent acronym. Speaking as someone who sometimes tries to name things, really well done with Earth. So can you tell us what does Earth do? What can you tell us about the physical space, and also what research is doing there to make a more sustainable world?
Well, thank you. I just want to say hi to everyone. It's my 10th month of being at U of T again. I did all 3 of my degrees here. In fact, my PhD in the building right next door. And it's such a pleasure to be back home, I would say. I would say that, unlike Ron, we have Earth District, which is as much an idea as it is a built environment. It is called Earth and Related Technologies Hub, and it is an innovation ecosystem. And what that means is that we bring together actors, both within the university and within the region, to come together, the greatest minds coming together to solve what we think is an environmental crisis. And so our focus on Earth and related technologies, first of all, we just announced it last October 28th, It involves a whole series of institutions within the Eastern GTA, and we've partnered universities with colleges in a wonderful partnership. Colleges bring a lot of technologists and students who come to the table, and we bring a lot of the theory, and by working together, we think we can move it forward, the solutions much more quickly. We have Centennial College and U of T, together with OnTech University and Durham College, as well as Trent University and soon to be added Fleming College. So what do we do? Well, we're really about trying to, first of all, create physical capacity to develop technologies. In 2015, UT Scarborough had this beautiful new building built on environmental sciences. And right now, I have the pleasure of helping design an advanced environmental technologies building. And it's really of importance to everyone here because by working with Climate Positive, and understanding some of the limitations of laboratory space for some of the engineering downtown. We want to really build that partnership with engineering and UT Scarborough to have a space where we can start developing environmental technologies to address and reach climate neutral goals or climate positive goals. But I also want to say that it's much about the space, the buildings, as well as the ideas. We recognize that to be successful, we have to create a talent pipeline. And we also recognize that this talent pipeline, especially given the previous panel, we need to be inclusive. And what that means is we need to really particularly create opportunities for Black and Indigenous members of the population, newcomers who are coming from countries because of the geopolitics of the world come to Canada and look for a better future. When we look at CleanTech, we have a $60 billion industry in Canada. And in the next 8 years, we expect another 400,000 new jobs in the CleanTech industry. But according to the Royal Bank of Canada, the labor force does not have the skills to take up those jobs. And so we want to deal with that front and center, and we want to be inclusive of Black, Indigenous, newcomer populations. So we're creating a talent pipeline to go with the Earth District. This includes identifying people from high schools who would not necessarily think about joining STEM or engineering and want to come into that talent pipeline. It includes undergraduates who are looking for a value-added experience in addition to the university training to get into innovation and entrepreneurship. It involves those who just graduate and can't find that employer. And so we have over 50 partners that have been identified who are willing to take students on, and those are paid placements to give them that work experience. And finally, we're creating this leadership academy, and this is led by the Scarborough Charter idea first, and now we're developing a National Academy of Inclusive Leadership. We'll be having paid positions for 20 postdocs, 10 of them embedded in industry and 10 of them embedded in academia to come together to ensure that the talent pipeline that we create can be inclusive. And so not only will be getting people in early career positions, but also leading organizations in terms of the clean tech sector. Thank you.
Thank you. That all sounds really exciting. You have to have us out to Scarborough to see the building at some point.
On.
Okay, so moving along, talk about another excellent sustainability initiative at the university. Shatha, can you tell us about the Climate Positive Initiative? I mean, I think first, what is an institutional initiative opposed to a less grand initiative? And what work, I know that you're doing a lot of work to make the university a partner increasingly with the private sector and have a lot of bridges between academia and the physical world, both here and outside. Can you tell us about how that's going and what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here and to tell the world about climate positive energy and what we do. So as you mentioned, Shoshanna, it's one of the institutional strategic initiatives at the University of Toronto. And the University of Toronto put or developed some strategies where they said, okay, these are the important areas where we see strengths in research, in education, in training of the university, and we need to double down on them and to focus on them. And they are also of interest to the society and the community in general. And climate and sustainability, as you can imagine, is one of those. And why we were created to showcase all the great work, the research, the brain power that the University of Toronto is doing to the external world, and also bring the external world inside through meaningful partnerships and collaborations with different industrial partners, different community members, municipalities, non-for-profit organizations. So our role is kind of, if you want to think about it, as one-stop shop, everything clean tech at the University of Toronto, because the university is taking the lead, and we really need to showcase that for sure. How we are doing that? We are doing that through 4 different pillars in our programming. So one of it is really the research, and this is where we collaborated with Ron in our first call for proposal, where we try to understand where the campus is heading, what are the issues or the bottlenecks of preventing us from moving forward towards net zero by 2050, and how can researchers and these smart people at the university help in moving us forward. So the university, and Ron leading that, identified 4 different areas. So it was renewable energy, energy efficiency in buildings, as well as health and well-being, and scope 3 emission calculation, which is really kind of a debatable topic these days. And what we tried to do, back to what the previous panel was talking about, is multidisciplinary. So when we issued the call for proposal, we said it has to be multidisciplinary. We encourage people from, or researchers from different disciplines to work together, because our initiative is multidisciplinary. And what we got, again, is chemistry and mechanical engineering. Like, you can argue it is multidisciplinary because you get the chemistry and the chemical engineering together, but that was really not the intent. The intention was to get somebody from MEng public policy working with that chemist to try to understand, in order for that product to be adopted in the market, what new regulations need to come in place. How municipalities and decision makers need to convince consumers of changing their behaviors. Again, this is from humanity. So this is kind of the type of interdisciplinary work that we were trying to do, but that was the first attempt at it. So we are happy and satisfied with the outcome so far, but learning from that, we need to be more encouraging and inclusive in the future of kind of directing the researchers of where we need to see that going. So research is one of the pillars. The second pillar is really the talent training and education. So again, we are trying to be really multidisciplinary. So we issued scholarships and fellowships for postdocs and grad students. And we said, as a condition of getting this scholarship, you need to do something multidisciplinary. We don't care what it is, but we need you to get out of your comfort zone. Whether you're going to go to a seminar that has nothing to do with the science, it's about just sustainability or carbon pricing, or you talk to a professor and do like a little bit of research with him, or even just audit a class that is not about science, or if you are in economics with Rotman, that is not about economics. Come and see what carbon capture and how it is working, or how energy is being developed in the society. So this is what we are trying to do. And back to Irena's point and how we integrate together, we really believe strongly in what Irena and her team is working on, and we think she has great ideas of helping people. And we recently launched our undergrad summer program, and it's specific for underrepresented students in the field of sustainability. So we encourage anybody who fits within this criteria to apply, because it's really a wonderful opportunity to learn in the summer. And again, it's multidisciplinary. So as Irena covers like everything from high school all the way to upskilling the current talent, our focus is really kind of the research and the grad excellence in education. And the last piece, I know I'm running out of time, but my last piece about collaboration, and I'll be very quick in it. The collaboration piece is we are trying to bring, as I said, the external world inside. So we are trying to go out there and understanding what are the real world problems, so that we can talk to professors and tell them, hey, we heard that this is really a problem and companies are willing to work with you on that. Are you ready to work with them? So this is really what we do, and this is kind of 70% of my life right now is trying to go out there and understand the problems and bring them back to the university. I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm sure we could have given the whole 50 minutes to each of our speakers to hear about what you're all doing. So thank you for the bridge to the private sector, because I'm going to use that to launch over to Bryan, who's in the private sector, and one of U of T's favorite type of people who graduate and go found a business and come back and tell us about it. So Bryan, can you tell us about, you graduated from MIE, you've gone off, you've started your own company. Can you tell us about the core mission of Enlighten, and also about how your work is lifting up and promoting the work of others in building a more sustainable world?
Sure, so thank you for that. Yes, I did graduate from U of T in mechanical engineering, and I'll say that was really the spark that got me into the sustainability field. I mean, sustainability, it's in the media, it's the exciting buzz thing right now, yet it's been around for a very long time. I graduated in '91, and the design project I did was in a natural gas pickup vehicle. And that was, here we competed against 23 other universities. And that's what sparked me into what are the alternatives? What are different things that we can do out there versus the traditional? And that's what got me, I started off my career in the corporate world, but then realized that really that was too slow. Things weren't happening fast enough, and that's when I started developing my own businesses. And with my business Enlighten right now, we're focused more on helping those sort of small and medium-sized companies with sustainability initiatives. It's a huge thing, it's big. And where do you start? You've got buildings out there right now that go under LEED certification, and that sort of leads up to construction, what it takes to build a building to that standard. When a building exists, you've got standards out there like WELL and FitWell, which are complicated standards, and for small and medium-sized businesses, that's too much for them to take on. So we actually created our own certification standard inside of Enlighten, focused not just on the technical side, but also the people side of the equation. We felt that both were key and important. So when we're looking at sustainability initiatives, we want to make sure that businesses include their staff. It's not that we're going to put on some solar panels, or we're going to do some geothermal, and we're going to do these things, and it's all hidden behind the walls. You have to include your staff so it becomes part of all of our everyday lives. And that's the real mission that Enlighten is up to. And we want to reward people and businesses for making a difference. The goal is reduction of carbon emissions. Why go to a standard when it's like, see where you are today and reward those companies for where they are next year and the year after and the year after that? So that is the approach we've taken. And it's not just, as I said, on the building side, it's on the people side. Are you doing things, say, of making a cafeteria in your building so your staff don't all have to go out and drive or take to go and get food inside of the building? How easy is it for them to get to work? What's the walkability access of your building? And here, especially in Toronto, a lot of buildings that businesses occupied aren't owned by themselves, so they cannot do their own initiatives. So we work with them to see what initiatives you can do, particularly on your own. But from that, building off of something Irena was saying in terms of CleanTech is a big industry for Canada, myself personally looking to see where I could amplify the impact I was having. Last year launched a venture fund for Black and other underrepresented founders in CleanTech. So it's building off of the CleanTech initiatives and things that are going on here in Canada, but focus specifically on Black and underrepresented founders, so they could see that there is money available, that there is people willing to encourage them and help them develop those technologies that we need for the future, because it's not just going to come from one group or one sector. It's going to take all of us to make a difference.
Thank you. All right, so Priscilla, same questions. You're a principal at, my notes, I'm in the wrong place. Purpose Building, Inc. That was an embarrassing fail. You're a principal at Purpose Building, Inc. Can you tell us about the work that you do there and how that's impacting on a sustainable world?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's funny listening to Bryan's introduction, all of the things I was going to say I just threw out the window, because in a way I think that what Enlighten does and what Purpose does are counterparts. You left an organization because you saw it wasn't moving fast enough, and you're there to help enable small and medium businesses move faster. Purpose exists to help the large organizations move faster in real estate. It's actually, acceleration is right in our mission statement. So we work with some of the largest real estate owners, managers, developers in the country, including U of T, in accelerating their sustainability journeys when it comes to their real estate portfolios. It includes everything from helping them define and achieve their sustainability goals on a single new development that you might be putting up. It helps them, it could include figuring out how to get an existing building to net zero over the course of the next 30 years. It could include looking at a portfolio. Now we're looking about hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. How are we going to scale that over the next 30 years to best pick out the order that you're going to get your buildings there? It could include community scale work. We've been doing some work on the Downsview redevelopment in the northwest end of the city and figuring out the community scale. How can we figure out not just low carbon strategies, but to everybody else's point, how do we support diversity? How do we support a healthy lifestyle? We work with organizations like Canada Green Building Council and BOMA to roll out certification programs that support and recognize those kinds of initiatives. And we also work with the C-suites of real estate organizations to really understand, as an organization, where are they going, and then what's the impact of what's happening on the ground? How do we connect those dots so that we don't have left-hand, right-hand situations going on? So as a result, we have a really diverse team, mostly engineers, some not, but multiple disciplines on our team, working on sustainability in real estate from all kinds of different facets, from really deep technical analyses on building systems, to certifications, to strategies and research, to looking at, we talked about scope 3, looking at embodied carbon of materials and material sourcing. So it's a really exciting field to be in, and this is the place that we have chosen to focus energy. It's accelerating large real estate companies in their journey.
Thank you, everybody, for your introductions. I want to move to general questions for everybody, and I have a couple, and then we'll go to the audience both here and online. The first one is, you're working on this, you're working really hard, it's great to see more things happening, but obviously if it was easy, we would have done this already. So if you can pick one, what's one thing that's currently making your jobs hard or the move towards sustainability hard, and what's a pathway you hope might be in the near future for getting over that hurdle? Feel free to volunteer in any order.
Well, maybe I'll go first, and there's, I don't know if there's too many things that are making it hard, but there's definitely a couple of hurdles. I guess that's almost the same, isn't it, that we've been focusing on. I'll pick on one and pass it on to my colleagues here for others, but I've been spending a lot of my time, especially the past 6 months, once we've announced our strategy, now we're into the concept of, well, how do we fund this strategy? And that, from the U of T lens, the plan, and if you're interested in seeing it, I'll put the plug out there. It's at climatepositive.utoronto.ca. You can download the whole technical study and see what it takes. It's about a $1.2 billion plan over 30 years. So, and surprisingly, we think we can get to this climate positive future with primarily existing technologies. There's a couple of sort of challenge spaces, and Shatha and I are partnering on addressing some of them. But our focus, and my focus of late, has been around the financing models, and we've been doing quite a lot of work even with Rotman to better understand how do you come up with different forms of sustainable finance. How do we actually make these type of plays in the market? And one of those challenges is not just financing, but then finding the right market partner and getting industry ready to help us implement these types of solutions at the type of scale that we're talking about.
Show me the money.
So on the technology piece, talking to partners in the industry, I noticed that there is two sides of technology. There are technologies right now that are already at scale, and you can deploy it, and they are all new technologies. They will reduce emissions, etc. But there are still technologies that would still need R&D. And when you go and talk to industry partners, their focus is really right now and what we can do today, and how we can install, this district heating system, and how I can do this renewable farm. And they don't think that probably in 2 years you will still have these issues and you need to cut your emissions, and at that point it will be too late for you to think at R&D, because the R&D is long term. Like you need 4 or 5 years minimum before you see the fruition of that technology. So this is what we are facing. Like wind and solar and energy efficiency is right there, and it is really deployable at the right price. But when it comes to, for example, carbon capture or alternative fuel, especially for the hard to abate sectors like the mining and steel, etc., there is lots of R&D that needs to happen, but the sector is reluctant because they want to go after the technologies that are available right now. So these are like one of the challenges here.
Bryan.
Yeah, I was gonna to add what was said there. I mean, for me, the challenge is financing at those early stages, right? Because as you were just saying, there is need for that longer term. I credit my corporate career, it was in the natural gas sector, with that ability to think 25, 30 years into the future. And then when I look at the Canadian landscape, there's a lot of money available for later stage and more advanced companies or stuff that's available today. But to develop these early stage companies, that was the missing. And that was one of the reasons why I created the venture fund, is that early stage, especially, as I said, for Black and other underrepresented founders, because you need that time for the technology to develop. You need that time for it to grow and then come to the stage when it can be taken on by larger institutions. So finding that money at the early stages, that for me is the big challenge, and that's one of the big ones I'm tackling.
I just want to pick up on that because I just came back from the Times Higher Education Innovation and Impact meeting in Stockholm. And they had a number of people from industry together. And one thing that really created cause for deep reflection was many people in the industry talking about R&D and the fact that we have to move away from a competitive model to one that's a collaborative model. You want to invest in what the next R&D development is, and what I saw was people working together who would otherwise be competitors, coming together to invest so that when that technology was available, it would be more cost effective and you can actually afford it. And so I think that if we could, as a university, create a space where those types of industry champions come together in a safe space to help support each other to develop the R&D faster, and then they all benefit from it, that would be a pretty amazing thing. So I guess you talked about show me the money, and we talk about build it and you will come. I would say create a space where we can work closer together because we're stronger together in achieving where we need to go.
Creative way, oh, here we go. I was trying to come up with a creative way to bring all those three things together, and I think I did. In the commercial real estate market, these large organizations are fundamentally managing someone else's money. It's typically, they're publicly traded, it's investors, it's stockholders, and so there is a fiduciary duty to provide some kind of return. It's also a very competitive landscape. But what we're seeing and what we're trying to accelerate is the idea that we need to shift this market as a whole. And as soon as some leaders pick it up and demonstrate that this is what it means to be a leader in the space, everyone else will have no choice to follow, but because they will lose out competitively otherwise. So in a way, it's collaborative in that they're working, they're emulating each other. It is still maintaining the competitive spirit, but we're working with a few select clients who are very progressive on the financial side of things to recognize you're going to have to rebalance what it means to be profitable. You're going to have to relook at what a return on investment means. You can't just look at your first year returns. You have to consider the improvement in your asset value when you're investing. You have to consider not just today's carbon tax, but the carbon tax at the end of life and the full building lifespan. You need to consider the fact that it's not just about dollars, but it's about risk. What happens if your building can't get natural gas in 30 years because it's illegal? And so it continues to be the biggest challenge today, reworking the economic formula of sustainability in buildings, but I do believe we're all on that journey, and I appreciate all of the initiatives that are happening in other sectors because I think those will have a part to play as well.
Thank you. Okay, one more question from me and we'll go to the audience. So we're here at a university, and we have 3 university panelists and 2 people interested in what the university is doing. So if we're going to make this real, and we have a big challenge over the next decade, what do you think that the university needs to do or needs to do more of, or we should congratulate the university for doing in the next decade? And I'd like to start with you, Priscilla and Bryan, as speaking from the private sector.
I got put on the spot there a little bit. I think that at the rate that our economy is evolving, the rate that the technologies evolve, the rate that the skills that are needed are evolving, it's almost quarter over quarter that the skills are changing sometimes. If there was a venue for university curricula to keep up with the evolution such that, for example, all students graduated with an experience with energy modeling, or all students graduated understanding what certification programs exist for sustainable buildings, or all students graduated understanding what is science-based targets and the importance of getting to net zero by 2050. I think then the lift in the first year becomes less. And don't just reserve that for graduate students. I think undergrads going straight into the workforce need that too. I think if there's a venue to create that discussion on here's what's really important for the students when they're coming out, then I think we can evolve the curriculum more quickly.
I mean, I'll add to that. I'll actually pick up on a discussion we're having at lunch. And one of the people I was speaking with, he was saying when he just started to do his master's program here at U of T, he was looking for opportunities not to, let me just work on this problem. He wanted to work on a problem that he knew was going to be needed now or in the near future. So I think as a university, creating those stronger partnerships with industry and looking at what's out there, so you're saying, here's what the need is, and then bringing that back to the undergrad and the grad level to say, here's the things to work on. I'll go back to, as I said, when I was working on a natural gas vehicle competition, it was a partnership with, then it was Consumers Gas, now Enbridge, Union Gas, TransCanada Pipelines, and GM that all came into the university that said, hey, we're going to put money into this competition so that you can demonstrate that this is possible to do that. And I think working on those real initiatives that are present and needed right now is some of the things that a university could do better versus more of a theoretical approach. Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad each of you said what you said, because this week we're starting the design of a survey to ask industry what your needs are. And we in developing this talent pipeline, it is one that is going to be co-designed, co-created with industry. And so the first step is not to assume we understand what you need, but to hear from you what you need. So thrilled to see that. Give me your contact. You'll be given the survey. We'll move forward. But also, I would add that we can create these living laboratories. And Ron, I mean, on this campus, everybody knows it as a living lab. I want you to remind you that we have 2 other campuses, and we also have living laboratories. And this is where we kind of open up the guts of the building and imagine a CleanTech building where students can go and see it behind the scenes, how it works. And that gives them that up front and center experience of the technology. Sorry. And so whether it's from living laboratories and work placements, but the industry needs, and starting with co-creation and bringing you to the table and helping shaping the future curricula is something that we're pretty excited about.
Maybe I can expand on that. I think I love what you're saying, because those are concepts that we're not just contemplating, that we're actually trying to take into action today. So, through the president's, it's called the CECCS, and the acronym always eludes me. It's the Committee on Environment, Climate Change, and Sustainability. I think I got it right.
You need an acronym like EARTH.
We do. But nonetheless, we have set a goal so that there is a sustainable education opportunity for every single graduate, and not just in the traditional realms like engineering, maybe architecture, but right across the board. How do we introduce concepts of sustainability in medicine? How do we do it in dentistry? So that's something that's actively being worked on. We have things that we call sustainability pathways, and they've been launched in many divisions, and our intent is to have that right across the board. And that does several things. It doesn't just do it in the curricular environment. We also then extend that concept into the living lab environment. And these are opportunities for experiential learning, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And my absolute favorite example is what is happening 300-400 meters. I'm going to say it's that way, but I might be wrong, which is Canada's largest geoexchange system that's going right underneath front campus. That way, thank you. And so that is going right underneath where everyone does that famous walk from UC to Con Hall the day you go through convocation. And that actually started through a Living Lab project. We've had probably over 1,000 different engineering students at this point study that, right from first year to fourth year capstone courses. And now it's in construction. And what we're doing through the construction of this project is also creating what I've been calling a subterranean classroom. We'll actually be able to have a class down there of 20 to 30 students, so they don't just read about geoexchange. There's an opportunity for them to go underground, see how it works. We're color coding all the pipes, getting all the pumps in place, so it becomes a learning tool. So we have an opportunity for students to get engaged and involved at the onset when we start to contemplate these projects. We bring students into construction sites to physically see it, and then hopefully it becomes a learning tool post-construction.
Okay, so we have about 12 more minutes. Are there questions in the room, or somebody is representing the internet? Are there questions online? Whoever you were pointing at, go for it. I don't know.
So really excellent talk. I graduated with my undergrad 22 years ago, so it's been a long time. But one thing I think about when I think about my son, who's going to be going into university in 2 years, is when we think about a sustainable planet, we also think about what are the jobs of the future, right? And so when you guys said, let's talk to industry, let's get industry to give us input as to what kinds of things they would be looking for. It's not just in sustainability jobs, but what kind of jobs are not going to exist 10 years from now, 20, 30 years from now. And so as people working in this field, you must have given a lot of thought to this question as well. Are there specific aspects of the engineering education, the current engineering education, that in 10 years, we don't really need to be teaching our kids about certain things because those jobs won't exist? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
That's an interesting challenge, especially as we're talking about, we want to make sure that we're relevant for industry, but if industry changes really quickly, we don't want to be chasing our tails or the current shiny new ball. We want to do something foundational that's important and that holds with time. What responsibility, how do we enact our responsibility to the future? How do we make sure that we're not rapidly dating ourselves and the education we provide? What do you think about that?
I can jump in on that. Picking off where the previous panel was talking about, I think it's really about that ability to learn how to learn. Because I could not sit here and predict what's the jobs of the future in the next 2 years, much less 5, 10 years into the future. So that ability is going to be key. Another thing that I think that's going to be important for especially the engineering department that today, it's been a long time since I was in school, it was over 30 years ago, but learning the human side of things, right? We're very good at the technical, we're very good at the technical understanding. And when I look at sustainability in general right now, the biggest challenges is that, yes, there's technical to overcome, but it's the people challenges, and we're learning how to relate to people, we're learning how to relate to regulators, and learning how to relate to different governments. And I mean, U of T is good in terms of having different people in from all parts of over the world, but putting that as part of the curriculum and learning how to interact with other people and teaching more humanity skills inside of engineering, I think is something that would be a big advancement for the future and well needed.
Actually, the MEng Innovation Lab is doing an amazing job in trying to go out there and understand what types of jobs are going to be needed for the decarbonized economy, and then come back and then try to to talk to the engineers and other disciplines to come up with the new curriculum that's needed, how this will look like. So for example, one of the things that they were working on was AI, but also there is another project related to EVs, right? So what's going to happen to the people who are currently working in these manufacturing facilities? You know, is the engine changing? Do they know how to work with, you know, the lithium-ion batteries, the fuel cells in the future, etc.? So they are trying to do that, to go to industry and being proactive to understand where the industry is heading, and then come back to campus. And what we are trying to do with Rotman as well is the opposite, back to your point about humanities, where Rotman is teaching economics and finance, etc. What we are trying to do is to include energy, maybe like a crash course on energy. And it will be like very high level, not necessarily like the nitty-gritty details of how electricity is generated, but very high level, so that the person from Rotman, when he stands there, he will be knowledgeable of what's going on in the energy sector. And it's very important for the coming 50 years at least.
So I just want to interject right there before you pass the mic on to your fellow panelists. And I fully agree that the key is to learn how to learn. But there has to be a certain level of fundamental knowledge of the fundamentals. And education over the decades has really moved away from fundamentals and more towards what is the topic of the day, right? And so students are getting a high-level understanding of the key current hot topics, but when they try to go deeper, they don't have that fundamental basis to fully grasp and work in that field. And so my question is, if the future is so uncertain and people might be changing fields, changing careers multiple times in their lifetime, how can they ensure that what they're getting at university is still going to serve them 20, 30, 40 years from now?
I might jump in here, as I think the one person on the panel who's part of my full-time job is to teach. I think that sits with us as professors to use what's currently sexy as the appetizer, and to make sure the fundamentals and the base are provided there, even if it's not currently as exciting, but to make sure we give all of our students a really good foundation. But also, I think the answer is we can't. We cannot teach people in university everything they need to know for their entire careers, and anybody who wants that out of an undergraduate degree is going to be deeply disappointed. We give a foundation, and then people build on it for the whole rest of their lives. And when you're 50, it doesn't matter that much what your degree was in. It was a launching pad, and what happens in the 20 plus years since then matter more. Thank you. I'm going to switch away from education for a few minutes, just because we're running out of time and there's so many great people to hear from. Do you have any more questions from the physical or virtual audience?
From our virtual questions, we have one. When designing new buildings with sustainability as a primary goal, what are the details that we need to consider to maximize occupant experience and utility? Yes. When designing new buildings with sustainability as a primary goal, what are the details that we need to consider to maximize occupant experience and utility?
Okay, great. So you're designing a sustainable building, but you need to care about how the occupants experience and how they use it. What do you take in mind? Are these goals in tension, or are they amplifying each other? Is there a conflict?
I mean, the way I would answer that is, it hasn't been well taken advantage of today. I see a lot of buildings where they're designed to a standard and designed to, say, an optimal comfort level, but yet every individual is different. So I think going into the future, one of the things you need to look at, and this is where we work with our clients on, is engaging the people, because, you know, it's quite well known how women experience cold is different than how men. I'm one that's always cold, so, you know, I come in differently than everyone else. So it's being able to design buildings in a way to look for individual occupants and then keep them engaged as part of the process, I guess would be the short way I've put it right now. And it is making sure that we involve the human side more than just this is the technical way of doing it.
I'm actually going to tie it back to that point about learning how to learn and evolution. The status quo of building design today is doing what you did yesterday and putting it on a different site. We need to break out of that. Fundamentally, if we're going to design sustainable buildings, we need to constantly be rethinking what it is that we're designing for, who are we designing for, where are we designing for, and rethink our assumptions. That fundamentally is our role on design teams. Isn't always to bring the solutions, sometimes we do, but often it's to ask the right questions. So if someone online is interested in developing into that sort of a career, I think it's getting a broad base about exactly those things. What are the challenges that we're facing today? And asking designers to stop and think and consider those things as when they're designing buildings of tomorrow, because that's not the standard yet.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that a lot of the process and a lot of those sort of the components that'll get us to where we want to be from a wellness perspective has to do with engaging the occupants of the building. An interesting piece and a realization that we have is that there are very clearly well-defined sort of KPIs when it comes to efficiency. We have gross up factors in real estate. We can talk about EUI, or the energy use intensity of a building from a utility perspective.
Can you expand those acronyms?
Oh, which ones did I say?
KPI.
Oh, sorry, KPI. We have key performance indicators that we use to evaluate our buildings. So energy use intensity, EUI, helps us figure out, are we using too much energy? Where there's a known gap that we're trying to address through partnerships with our faculty members are, what are the wellness key performance indicators? So that we don't just monitor how much energy are we using per square foot. What do we need to monitor both in the design process and also post-occupancy that really impact wellness? And we've got actually several really good research initiatives underway right now that we are trying to take from research to, I call it knowledge mobilization. How do I meet with our faculty, and how do I as a practitioner take that and start to implement it on our campus? And that's work that's actually active right now, and one that we're quite hopeful will help us produce really engaging, not just efficient sustainably, but also healthy and well environments.
Anybody else, or can I have prerogative? Okay, I got it. So this is the final question I'll leave you with. It can be a downer to work in sustainability. We're always being told we're not doing enough fast enough, and when you're dedicating your entire career to doing as much as you can, as fast as you can, that can be hard. So what gives you hope at the moment? What are you excited about?
I can tell you, I don't think it's a downer. I always say, we're going to get that. We're not moving fast enough. We have people on the other side just saying, oh my God, this is too extreme. What are you doing? I think that I'm in the right spot because I made everybody upset, right? So that people are telling me I'm too fast and too slow simultaneously, which is great. I think what gets me excited is that we've got the opportunity, but at the university, we also have the commitment. We've got a leadership group that also wants to move this in an appropriate direction and be seen as, it's not just leaders, but as an area where we can then share this knowledge with everyone right across the city and beyond.
Yeah, expanding on that, we're seeing that kind of attitude across an increasing number of organizations. For different reasons, the leaderships at different, both public and private sector organizations are now quote unquote getting it. They're getting the urgency, they're getting it needs to be done, they're putting the dollars where they needs to be put. And is it going fast enough? Not yet, no. But the rate of change, the acceleration, that's what we are seeing. And I'm excited to be part of the solution, even if it, fingers crossed it gets us there, keeps us under 2 degrees or devastating climate change. But we're going in the right direction. And the more that we can engage all of you to be part of the solution, the more impact we're going to have.
I just looked at the time, so last word to Irena.
Well, thank you. I believe in the young people, and I believe in the creative energy and mindsets of young people. And I don't think that we're just going to have a linear acceleration. We're going to leapfrog with your creativity and the way what you will bring to the sustainability issues. So my belief is in you, and I'm excited by that, not daunted.
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking all 5 of our panelists for sharing their experience and excitement with us. I have so many more questions I'm going to try and sneak in the break. I'm sure many other people do as well. Thank you very much.